Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another episode of From the Page to the Screen. I'm going to talk about three more characters in this episode. The three characters I wish to cover are Dr. Octopus, Wolverine, and Magneto. I would say that all three characters are really awesome, and I think most of them have been well received on the big screen. So we'll start off with Amazing Spider-Man number 3, which is the first appearance of Dr. Octopus. Now, now we know Dr. Octopus only appeared in one Spider-Man movie, and that was Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi in 2004, played by Alfred Molina. I think I think a lot of people, critics, fans, agree that Spider-Man 2 of the Sam Raimi trilogy was probably one of the best comic book movies. I remember when it first came out, a lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people liked the story, thought it was an improvement over the first Spider-Man. I was one of those people and still am. I still enjoy that movie. I mean, no movie's perfect, right? Um, but I think it was a really good movie and a really good successor to Spider-Man. So let's talk about Dr. Octopus. Like I said, he was played by Alfred Molina, an English actor. I think he did a really good job portraying Dr. Octopus. Now, he looked a little different than the Dr. Octopus in the comics, but that's okay. Sometimes uh, the when characters appear on the big screen or on the little screen, sometimes it's for the best. Sometimes it's for the better than what was on the page. But they still kept a lot of Dr. Octopus's attributes on the screen. They changed him up a little bit. I think they made him more of a sympathetic character, which is fine. I think it really worked well. I thought Alfred Molina's portrayal of Otto Octavius and his alter ego, Dr. Octopus, was done really well. When you saw him as the scientist, he was coming from a strong moral base, and when he became Dr. Octopus, you saw that moral base challenged uh, with his new powers and all that stuff. But you saw at the end of the movie that the scientist prevailed, and the moral background is a character really came out and did the right thing. So I think in all, it was a really good portrayal of that villain. Um, like I said, there were some differences. I remember one of the complaints I heard from people I was working with at that time when they were complaining, like, oh, he's Spider-Man's fighting a villain that's like kind of overweight and all that stuff. Well, that's the character. The character in the comics. He's not supposed to be this jacked up supervillain. Okay, I mean, you take a look at some of the Batman villains, like the Joker and Scarecrow and many others. They're not all jacked up characters. They're all simple characters, petite characters, and all of that. It doesn't. Your supervillain doesn't necessarily have to have like bulging biceps and all that. And I'll talk about some of the different some things related to that when it comes to Wolverine. I thought that having the character, they pretty much kept him true to the comic, but like I said, with some changes, I thought it was really well executed. And I think a lot of people would like to see Dr. Octopus again on the silver screen and hopefully top Alfred Molina's performance as him. So I think that was good. Now we're going to move on to Wolverine. Wolverine. Wolverine is like with Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus was only in one movie, played by obviously one actor. Wolverine was in many movies, the X-Men movies, and was played by one actor, Hugh Jackman. And he appeared, his first full appearance, in Incredible Hulk 181. So, how was Wolverine different on the big screen from the pages? Well, there were a couple differences that that I think maybe at first bothered some fans. First off, to address the elephant in the room when it comes to Wolverine. Wolverine, I think, is what, only 5'2" in the comics, maybe 5'5". I don't know, but he's short, is what I'm trying to say. In the big screen, Hugh Jackman's not short. I think he's over 6 feet tall. I don't know how tall he is, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", whatever he is, 6 feet. I don't know, but he's at least 6 feet tall. And I think when he first came out, when the movie first came out, when he first appeared in X-Men in 2000, I think that was one of the things that some people say, well, I think they liked him, but they're like, oh, he's not short like he is in the comics. Does it really matter? I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, maybe for someone who's short, it matters because they might want to see that representation on the screen, and I can understand that, especially with a major character like Wolverine. Who knows? Maybe they'll do something like that in the future when they recast Wolverine. I doubt it, but I think that they might. You never know. And like I was saying with Dr. Octopus, like the criticism I heard someone say about Dr. Octopus, oh, he's heavy and all that stuff. Well, that's just the way it is. All characters don't necessarily have to be all buff. And with Wolverine, he doesn't necessarily have to be super tall, even though that's what they went with the, not super tall, but tall in the movies. I still think it works, no matter what. I think it worked really well on the screen. And when it comes to how Hugh Jackman portrayed him, I can't see anybody else playing Wolverine other than Hugh Jackman. I'd be interested to see, because they eventually have to recast him for the MCU, because Hugh Jackman, I think, is over 50 now. But, who knows? He might play an older version of Wolverine, which is very possible, but they're going to have to cast a young actor, probably in maybe late 20s, early 30s, to take the mantle of Wolverine into the MCU. So that's coming, and I'm be interested to see who they get and how that works out. I'm sure it'll work out, hopefully. But speaking of Hugh Jackman, he was perfect. Every time I see him, I see Wolverine, with the hairstyle, and always had that, snarl on his face. He really was like, to me, the John Byrne Wolverine. He's always had like a chip on his shoulder, but he always did, I think, the right thing in the end. And he always, was a pretty decent person. And I think you got that, even though he had a checkered past in the comics, and he had a checkered past on the big screen too. I really felt that Hugh Jackman brought that character to life, and I think he was perfect for the role. I think I heard over the years, I remember reading Wizard magazine back in the 90s and all that stuff, maybe you remember too, if there was ever going to be an X-Men movie, people that were interested in being Wolverine. I think I heard Glenn Danzig, remember Danzig? He was interested in being Wolverine. I think there was even talk that Russell Crowe was going to play Wolverine. I don't know if that was just speculation or if there were actual talks that he was going to be Wolverine. I don't know. It worked out. I think at the time when Hugh Jackman got the part, he was relatively unknown, and that was really the movie that made him. Playing that character, Wolverine, made him a household name. And he was in plenty of other things, too, that I think were successful. So I think Hugh Jackman, I think he appreciates being Wolverine. Sometimes there are some actors that, like Harrison Ford. I've heard he doesn't like being known as Han Solo. I think he likes being known as Indiana Jones. But I think when people would ask, fans would talk to him about being Han Solo, and be like, he didn't really like that character as much. Well, I got news for him. Han Solo made him. If not for being Han Solo, he wouldn't be Indiana Jones. But you get this sometimes like that, those actors that don't seem as appreciative of the roles that made him. I think Hugh Jackman, on the other hand, I think he was very appreciative of being Wolverine. He seems like he really enjoyed being that character. And in interviews, he's always seemed very positive about that character. So I think you couldn't have gotten anybody better to play him at that time. So definitely one of my favorite interpretations of a character from the comic book page to the movie screen. And now for the last one. Another one I think has been very well received. Has been played by two actors. Magneto, as you see him here in his first appearance, X-Men #1 right here. He was also first showed up in X-Men in 2000 along with Hugh Jackman, right? and he was played by Ian McKellen. We we know Ian McKellen from many different things over the years. He's been I think a Shakespearean actor. He's been in many things in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s. I remember the first thing I saw him in was, what was that movie on HBO? And the band played on. He was playing Bill Krause. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But another one, he did another HBO movie where he played Tsar Nicholas II. That's what I remember Ian McKellen from. And then, of course, we know him as Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings movies. Again, I can't imagine. I remember Sean Connery was offered that role to play Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. Sean Connery turned it down because he didn't understand it. He didn't understand the books and all that stuff, which I can understand. Sometimes it's hard to get through. So I can't imagine Sean Connery playing Gandalf the Grey. I can't imagine anybody else playing Gandalf the Grey except for Ian McKellen. Same thing with Hugh Jackman, Wolverine. Then he got the role of Magneto, and I think he did a wonderful job as Magneto. I mean, Magneto was advanced in age. And one of the problems I had with Magneto in the comics was that not the Jack Kirby Magneto, but later Magnetos that you saw in the 80s and the 90s, especially the Jim Lee. I love Jim Lee. I like the way he drew Magneto, but with the muscles coming out, I just never was a fan of muscular Magneto. Fit Magneto, but not muscular Magneto. That was always a big turnoff because the guy was, in his 50s, 60s? He wasn't a young man like the X-Men. And I've always liked him portrayed that way. And then you have someone like Ian McKellen who looked like Magneto. He really did, with the narrow face and the white hair. And he looked physically fit when he first started playing Magneto. He looked like the part, and you really believed that he was Magneto. At the time, I think when X-Men came out, that first movie was a little hard to take because it seemed like one of those movies from comics to movies was a little hard to do on screen, like Fantastic Four. But I think because of characters like actors like Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, who has played Professor X, he'll be in another episode, Hugh Jackman, they really made those characters believable and credible on the silver screen. And now they are what they are. And we're all looking to see the X-Men in the MCU, right? But I think Ian McKellen did a great job playing Magneto. Now, there was also another actor that played Magneto. Michael Fassbender. I almost forgot his name. Michael Fassbender played a younger version of Magneto when they did the reboot of the X-Men series with X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, and that dreadful Dark Phoenix. Okay? I'll be talking about that one in another video. Michael Fassbender, like Ian McKellen, did a great job playing Magneto. I think he was excellent. He was believable. He was intense when he needed to be. And some say what you want about the X-Men films. I know sometimes they're not as viewed as favorably as other movies, but I think they were okay. But the character, when it came to Magneto, Ian McKellen and Michael Fassbender did that character a lot of justice, I felt. I think they were portrayed very seriously, with care, and I think with love. I don't think they, from what I know, I don't think Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender were like, ugh, this shit role. They may have thought that in their heads, but it doesn't show on the screen. Now, when it comes to Dark Phoenix, that last X-Men movie, I think they were all there to collect a paycheck because that movie just stunk. More on that when I talk about the Phoenix and her portrayal in the movies. But I think they all did but I think everybody in this video here, whether it was Alfred Molina, Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, and Michael Fassbender, I think they all did justice to the characters they portrayed on the silver screen. Unlike some of the other videos I talked about with Venom and the Green Goblin, where I really didn't like some of those performances, or I thought that some characters were very miscast, I thought all these characters, despite some of the differences that were on the page, despite those, I think they were all cast very well with every one of these actors, and I thought they did a great job with portraying them. What do you think? What do you think of some of their performances? Do you think they were miscast? let me know in the comments. Until next time, be safe.